Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to PACMTV. So, as this month comes to an end, we'll be again looking overall at Garvey's work. I've entitled this one Marcus Garvey's The Vision. We'll be looking at the works that he did today overall, and the way forward. It is nice to also look at Garvey's influence, because we know that Garvey has influenced many. So in 2020, just how influential is Marcus Garvey here and on the continent? So that's in the Caribbean, on the continent, and around the world we'll be focusing on. But just before we do that, we'd like to start, as usual, with paying homage to our ancestors. So we have with us today Ndugu Imani, who will be doing a libation for us. We also have Brother Mandingo with us, and we were hoping to have a couple of others soon. So what I'd like to do now is hand you over to Ndugu Imani, who will do just the pleasure of pouring libation. So Ndugu Imani.
Yes, thank you. Asante Sana, and Hamjambo, kindred. And greetings, Baba Mandingo. Nice to see you. So we will begin the Mabar Diliko Ya Nishati, which is to change the energy. So that's a ritual that I developed for us as we are in virtual space. So if we can't be together, so that we can become in one accord with each other through spirit by connecting with the universal consciousness, the all, and our ancestors. So I will now begin, and as Ndugu Tahaka has given me permission to start as my elder, I will begin. So Ndugu, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so that you can see that now, Ndugu?
Yes, it's up.
Okay, beautiful. Okay. So, Mabadiliko ya Nishati in Kiswahili, which change of energy. So to change the energy or the vibration, we're now going to thank the powers and to ask that we have a closer connection with them and that they assist in manifesting our objectives. And so anybody who's watching, please take part with this. But if you don't, that's absolutely fine. It's not about coercion. It's about love and unity and us coming back to our own culture. So if you want to just watch and in your own home, wherever you are, and participate, that's absolutely fine. If you want to participate with it, then you can follow it on the screen, and you'll see the translation in English, in Kiswahili, and in English, and any terms that I use in ancient Kemetic. Okay. So in order to change this energy, we need to ring a chime. I ring a chime, this triangle chime that I have here, and that is in order to bring us into connection with our higher selves, with the energy in wherever we are, and also to link us through the universal consciousness, which we can think of like as a single vibration, but it's expressed in many different forms. That's like a melody is if you heard a song and a melody, and if it's played very, very fast, it would come out as a single tone. And that's the same way we can conceive of the all, the creator, is that one tone that is expressed in many forms. So we use the chime to help us do that. But we also want to get our breathing in the correct form, so that calms us and makes us focus. So if you wherever you are, if you wish to participate, if you can sit straight and get your spine straight, your feet flat on the floor and your hands on your palms, and you close your eyes, and together, if we breathe together, if you follow me, and I'll lead the breathing. and that will help us to center ourselves. So what I'll ask is that first of all, if we close our eyes and if we breathe out, if we exhale, and as we exhale, we pull our stomachs in and we hold it, and then we relax the stomach and we breathe in, fully fill our lungs, and then we breathe out again with the mouth, pull our stomachs in to empty the lungs, then relax the stomach, breathe in, and then we breathe out, fill in the stomach, and relax and breathe in. We did it 3 times, so 3 is the spiritual number for coming into being. And now I'll ring the chime 7 times, and we can continue to breathe deeply. And I use 7 because 7 is a spiritual number for wisdom, seeking, and truth, but it's also a highly spiritual number that's through all creation. We have 7 days of the week. We have 7 notes in the musical, in music. We have the 7 colors of the spectrum, 7 layers to the skin, 7 openings to the body, 7 deadly sins that we've heard of. So there's 7 appears again and again through nature and myth. It's incredibly powerful. So let the chime go around you, over you, and through you, and center you, and bring you into connection with the energy where you are and with each other. Now you can please sit where you are, and you can open your eyes and you can follow the rest of the ritual. So I say in Kiswahili, I call upon the creator of the all, Ninaomba Yamaomba Wote. And then we, in unison with each other, we say we are one, we are the same thing. And that's Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba ya Nebacha. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. In Kiswahili, I call upon the principle and power. Ninaomba kununina nguvu ya mami water. You can see the meaning of the principle behind the cosmic force of mami water, Udon deity, Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. And now the other cosmic forces. Ninaomba kununina nguvu ya shu. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kununina nguvu ya Tefnut. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Ninamba kanunina nguvu ya nut. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. And now on to the other cosmic forces that are part of the cosmos, but also part of us and our psyche. And part of these are the Paut Neteru. This is the Kemetic tree of life. Ninam bakanunina nguvu ya geb. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninam bakanunina nguvu ya auset. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninam bakanunina nguvu ya sebek. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya heteru. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Peru. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Herakuti. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Maat. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Saka. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Tahuti. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Alsa. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Amen. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. And now we call upon those ancestors in our direct line. So I call upon my mother, Ninaomba Ojime Kelly. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ndugu Taka, you can hear me? Is there anybody you wish to call? And I take it that Baba Mandingo can hear me, but you can't respond. So I'll continue. Now we can call upon those ancestors who are not in our direct bloodline, but who left a wonderful legacy, an example for us, for fighting for building our nation, our community, our race. Ninaomba Mzee Honourable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba Mzee Amy Ashford Garvey. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba Amy Jacques Garvey. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba Alhaj Malik Shabazz. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba Betty Shabazz. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba Mzee Dr. Francis Chris Wilson. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Mzee means elder. Ninaomba Mzee Uzumuzulu Credo Umtwa. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba Mzee John Henry Clark, Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba Mzee Del Jones, Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Now to call upon those ancestors whose names we do not know, but groups of ancestors who also left a fantastic legacy and of resilience and fight and showed us the way. First should be those who we never should forget. We should always call upon, even though some of us do not know their names. Those who died and fought in the European enslavement, Arabic enslavement, colonialism, and neo-colonialism. Mangamazi. Ninaomba mababu ya Mangamazi. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba mababu ya the Asian Revolution. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba mababu ya Mosai. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba mababu ya APLA. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba mababu ya SWAPO. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba mababu ya Kemet. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba mababu ya Kaseti. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba mababu ya Twa na Hutu, first people on the face of the earth. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Waishi ambao watatutea sisi na wale mababu ambao bado hawajazaliwa. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. And finally, we end on the affirmation. Nguvu zote kwa watu wetu na mapenzi ya wote ni mapenzi yetu. That, dear brothers and sisters, is it. Thank you for participating in that ritual.
Okay, all right. Yeah, thank you very much, Ndugu Imani, for that. And now we will get in. I think Elder Pepperkai's just arrived, so when he's ready, I'll put him on the screen. So yes, as you know, August is dedicated to the month of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, and all month we've been having various meetings in his honor. So as the months draw to a close, I thought it'd be a very good idea just to have an overview on Garvey in terms of his life work and how his works has gone on to influence many people all around the world. So today we'll be focusing on specifically and how his work has influenced people, and then also looking at certain examples, because I know in this country we have buildings, we have monuments dedicated to him, we have plaques up. Recently in Namibia, I know they named a whole street, and dedicated that street to Garvey. And those things has been taking place throughout the years. So just before we actually go into the discussion, what I like to do, I've put together a little montage of some of the things Garvey has done and Garvey has achieved. So it'd be good to play that, and then after that we'll open up for a discussion. And please remember, the viewers, You're welcome to send in questions and comments. Any questions and comments you have, please send that in and we'll discuss around those as well. So at this point, what I like to do is just play a little montage, a few minutes of the achievements, some of the achievements of Marcus Garvey. Okay, so there we have some examples of some of the things that Garvey has done. I can see Elder Peppercorn in the room, but I don't think he's ready to go on screen yet, so I'll give him a few minutes. So, okay, then I'd like to start with you, Brother Mandingo. So in terms of, because as part of Garvey's legacy, I know you were very, hello Mandingo, can you hear me? Hello? Hold on, you need to.
He's on mute, he needs to mute himself.
Yeah. Brother Mandingo.
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Baba, yes?
Yes, yes, I can hear. Yeah, I can
I'm saying I didn't see the video. I didn't see the video that you showed because my browser didn't support the MP4 video. So you would have to tell me.
Ah.
What?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it was just a collection of examples, some of the things that Garvey has achieved and some of the honors that has been dedicated to him. For instance, we know that in Fulham and Hammersmith, where he lived, there's been a blue plaque put upon the building to let people know this is where Garvey lived while he was in London. We also looked at examples such as the Black Cross nurses that he put together, the Black Star Line, the shipping line, and stuff. So it was just a reminder to give people a reminder of some of the great achievements that Garvey had made throughout his time, and how. So what we want to look at now, how those has carried on, how his legacy has continued today. I mentioned that in Namibia, not too long ago, they actually named a street after him. So it's things like that we want to look at Garvey's achievement and its influence. So starting with you, because I know you were very close to Garvey's son. From, as you said, he was your physics teacher in the school in Jamaica. And I'm thinking back to my very early ages in Jamaica as well. And because Garvey came from St. Anne's Bay, I remember as a child going to St. Anne's Bay. And at the time, I know it's changed now, but at the time, there was no visible, nothing to show that Garvey had come from St. Anne's Bay. In fact, what was ironic, just down the road at Discovery Bay, you had a big statue of Columbus. I know that has been rectified now, because I know you have the Marcus Garvey Technical High School, and I know there's been a big statue put up to him outside the library there. So it's just, could you just fill us in a bit in terms of Garvey's legacy, how you see his legacy today?
Yes, Ujambo, and I give thanks and praises to the Almighty Creator. Ra, Olodomare, Chuku, Onyami, Maulisa. Those are some of the African names for the Almighty Creator in some of our various African languages. Yes, Ujambo, this Sunday, the 30th of August, 2020, and it's a pleasure again to be a part of the PACM TV Live. And of course, this month is in honor of Marcus Garvey, the greatest Pan-Africanist leader the world has ever known. You mentioned Hammersmith and Fulham, where he last lived. Yes, there's a plaque where he lived at 53 Talgard Road. And nearby at West Kensington, as you come out of West Kensington Tube Station, the second on the left is Bowman Crescent, 2 Bowman Crescent. There's also a plaque there because that was where his office was. So his office and his home were nearby. So 53 Talgard Road, where he lived, which is near Barron's Court Tube Station and West Kensington and Hammersmith, Broadway, and also his office, which is nearest to West Kensington Tube Station. You come out of the Tube Station, second on the left, and it's 2 Bowman Crescent. Off the North End Road, in the same region, near to Kensington High Street, there's a park called the Marcus Garvey Park also. The park there also, you know. And of course, in Brixton, in the vicinity of Atlantic Road and Railton Road, there's a Marcus Garvey Way. There's a Marcus Garvey Way. And I've always said that that massive park, well, pretty massive, off Brixton Road, named after the drummer Max Roach, I've always said that that park should really be named the Marcus Garvey Park. And if not after Marcus Garvey, then my mother's cousin, Amy Ashwood Garvey, because she lived and worked in Lambeth also, Amy Ashwood, the first wife, my mother's cousin. And in fact, there's a historical picture of Amy Ashwood Garvey with the mayor and his wife of Lambeth and Paul Robeson. You know, so her connections with Lambeth, I always said that park should be named either Marcus Garvey Park or Amy Ashwood Garvey Park, because these people, Marcus Garvey and his first wife, had very intimate links with this country. They lived there for several years and played dynamic roles, as we know. Marcus Garvey son, Marcus Garvey Jr., the first son, was my physics teacher at Kingston Technical High School. That's 82 Hanover Street, Central Kingston. But besides being my physics teacher, he was also my very good friend. And he and I and Elder Cyril Stewart, Brother Thomas and Brother Newman and others in 1968, whilst I was still going to Kingston Technical High School, we founded a party known as the African Nationalist Union. And the aim of that party was to strive to acquire political power for the African majority of Jamaica. We also had a paper called The Black Man, which was a continuation of his father's paper, The Black Man. Marcus Garvey's legacy is so vast. I mean, I've mentioned some of the things. The black star in Ghana's flag is from Marcus Garvey's black star in the organization. The black star by Accra in Ghana, the same thing. And in fact, Kwame Nkrumah, President Kwame Nkrumah, named Ghana's shipping line the Black Star Line. Malcolm X, his father, an African from the USA, who was lynched by the racists, KKK, was a high-ranking member of Marcus Garvey's UNIA and ACL organization. And Malcolm X's mother, who was an African from Grenada, was also a high-ranking member of Marcus Garvey's UNIA and ACL. Marcus Garvey's organization esteemed women. In fact, it was my mother's cousin, Amy Ashwood Garvey, who pushed and said, and it was done, that every UNIA and ACL division should have not only a male president, but also a female president. So it shows that recognition of the husband and wife, the man and the woman, you know, familyhood, you know. Of course, you, my brother, you know, you were speaking some words in Kiswahili, so you know the importance. Ujama, familyhood, you know, Imani, faith, we know. Marcus Garvey influenced not just Africans in Africa and outside of Africa, but influenced non-Africans. As a matter of fact, what Chairman Mao did in making China a superpower was that he implemented the Marcus Garvey doctrine and practice of self-reliance. Because what did Chairman Mao do? Which was what Garvey said we should do and did. Close ranks, keep outsiders out. So he waged war and defeated the enemies of China, who were aided by foreign imperialists. Kicked them out, united China, and did not allow non-Chinese to come into China and go any and anywhere and to cause trouble. And this is why China is where it is today. Because Chairman Mao implemented what Marcus Garvey said we should implement: self-reliance. We deal with our own efforts. We stand together, and so on. Ho Chi Minh, Father Ho, as the Vietnamese call him. When Marcus Garvey used to have public meetings, because of course at public meetings you would have non-Africans who could listen and so on. But at public meetings, Ho Chi Minh, as a seaman, used to attend some of these public meetings, and he was inspired to return to Vietnam to fight for the freedom of his Vietnamese people because of the inspiration that he got from Marcus Garvey. We talk about African History Month. G. Carter Woodson, who started off with African Week in the States. Before he did that, he was given a platform by Marcus Garvey to give lectures on African history at UNIA and AACL meetings. So G. Carter Woodson, who is week-long observation of African history, later became a month-long observation in February. Of course, in this country, it's done in October. Came out of the support that he got from Marcus Garvey. In terms of Rasta, the first Rastas in Jamaica, Leonard Howell, Dunkley, Hines and Hibbert, were all members of Marcus Garvey's UNIA and ACL organization. What happened was that when Haile Selassie I, when Rastafari was crowned as His Imperial Majesty, Haile Selassie I, along with his wife, Empress Menen, Leonard Howell, Archibald Dunkley, Hines, and Hibbert, what they did was that they said that they swore allegiance to His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie, and also reverence him by saying that he was divine. Yes, as if the return of Jesus. Of course, Marcus Garvey was not into this, so he did not allow them to promote that on the UNIA and ACL platforms about Haile Selassie being divine and the king to return. Because as you know, the UNIA and the ACL was a secular organization. It was not a Christian organization, a secular organization. Because Marcus Garvey knew that once you introduce religion, it would be used as the divide and rule tool amongst African people. The UNIA and ACL was strictly a secular organization. Of course, in the philosophy on opinions and elsewhere, Marcus Garvey said that the creator is spirit, invisible, but always present. But he said that if one wants, and it's only human, to visualize what the creator should be, that for African people, we should visualize the creator as looking like us with our African racial features. Because as he said, the Jews, the Chinese and other races, when they visualize what the creator looks like to them, they represent the creator as looking like themselves, which is perfectly understandable and normal. So Marcus Garvey said, whilst the creator is invisible and is not of a physical presence, so to speak, but if Africans want to visualize to themselves what the creator looks like, they should visualize the creator as looking African, just like themselves. So, you know, with our complexion, with our unique woolly hair, etc. And let us remember, we have had traditional religions in Africa thousands of years ago, before there was Islam, before there was any Hebrew Judaism and any other religions. We have the religions and the spiritualities of the Yoruba, of the Akan, of the Shona, and the Fu, and many others, and so on. And one of the things that Marcus Garvey said is that we must defend and protect the positive things in our traditional culture. Let us be clear. Not everything in everyone's culture, and I'm talking not just African, is positive. There are things which are negative. So what Marcus Garvey said, quite right, is that we must dispense with negativities and embrace and practice positivities. Yes, indeed. You know, Marcus Garvey in terms of self-imagery. Marcus Garvey established a factory to make African dolls for African girls to play with. Why did Marcus Garvey do this? Marcus Garvey did this because he knew that one of the major reasons why African people hated their features, hated their hair, wanted to have long blonde hair and that type of thing, was because our little girls, for example, were given dolls, European-looking dolls. So being so young and being so impressionable, being given these dolls that they were told were the standard of beauty, they grew up thinking that to be beautiful, you had to look European. This meant that their African features were negative and were ugly, which was the intention of the racist Europeans anyhow, to put down our African people, because they know that a people who hates their physical features are easy to handle, because people who hate themselves are mentally enslaved. You know, a brief aside, I was reading some disturbing news, you know, because I'm a journalist, so I'm always searching for news and so on. But this is of the distressing situation whereby thousands of Africans, African migrants in Arabia are in detention camps, concentration camps, where many are dying, beaten, tortured, etc. And they are being detained because the racist Arab Muslims are saying that they don't want them to spread coronavirus. There's a case of a 16-year-old Ethiopian boy who hung himself because he could not take the brutal situations. You know, our people living in dirty, squalid, and being tortured and being abused racially by these Arabs. And this is why I always say to those Africans who are Muslims, when you want to talk about African people, sort out your Arab Muslim co-religionists who, despite being Muslim, are racist against Africans. Remember, it was Muhammad himself who actually had to reprimand his own Arab people when they insulted Bilal, who was his servant. Yes, former slave and servant, and who was the one who would summon the Muslims to prayer. So even though Bilal, the African from Ethiopia, was Muslim, it didn't save him from racism. And we as Africans in the Western Hemisphere, we know that. This is why a lot of our people have had to form their own churches, because when they went to the churches of their so-called European brethren and sisters, they were not welcome. I remember a lady in Brixton telling me that when she first came here, and she and some other Africans from Jamaica went to church, and they went once or twice and realized that they were not welcome, they were shunned, that the priest, the English priest, told them not to come back because he and his English congregation were not comfortable with Africans coming to the church. So much for one love and Christianity coming from the Europeans, you know. So it goes to show that irrespective of religions, racism still operates. So being Muslim, being Christian is no protection. And this is why Marcus Garvey, the constant core of his philosophy was self-reliance in economics, in politics, in religion, and spirituality. Do not seek outside, seek within, because the power lies within. And that is the message that the greatest Pan-Africanist leader, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, gave us as African people, that the solution for our problems lies entirely with us.
Okay, brother.
Thank you.
Okay, Elder Pepperkai has joined us. I'd like to welcome him. Yes, Elder Pepperkai.
Chikamo, Mzee Pepperkai.
Ujambo.
Ujambo.
In Tottenham, we have the Marcus
Ujambo.
Garvey Library. And I'm sure a lot of people pass it every day. They go into it every day. They use it every day. Some may or may not know who Marcus Garvey was. I know there's a small bust of him, gives a brief little description of who he was. But there's a long history behind that library that many people in Tottenham, Haringey, London, the UK, just do not know. They see it, do not know what's behind it. Now, as somebody who was instrumental in getting that library, now it's called the Marcus Garvey Center, put into place, could you just give us a little history behind how it came about?
Greetings, brothers. And my first question is, where are the sisters? Because Brother Mandingo reminds us that central to the Garvey movement is the position of women in leadership role within the Garvey movement. And he also reminds us that it wasn't by accident. It's because Garvey and his wife realized the philosophy of African way of life, that it takes man and woman to carry those forward. So like in Africa, you have the king and the queen mother. The king could not take certain decisions without the queen mother's knowledge and acceptance. Also, as the king of his court, the queen also have her court. So Garvey was following African principle and African tradition. Now, you asked me about the Marcus Garvey Library. I know it came into being. But early on, Brother Mandingo reminds us that Garvey's presence in England was massive. He came here before he went to America and spent some good time here, gathering as much knowledge as he can about Africa, with his association with Yunus Muhammad. He also attended college here at Birkbeck College. And Garvey's work of race building has been magnetous inside this country. But the Mandingo reminds us of certain places Garvey lived and of his offices. But how many of us knew that Marcus Garvey lived and of his office just up Stanford Hill? And I'm certain, I haven't seen the documentary evidence, but I would believe that if Garvey lived and worked in Stanford Hill, Garvey would have put foot in Tottenham. I don't believe that Garvey would not come near Tottenham. And in answering the request by Brother Talker, how the Marcus Garvey Library came into existence at the Tottenham Green Center is when Haringey planned to develop this center, we get wind of it and approach them as to how the African presence can reflect in this development that they were doing. And we form what we call the Marcus Garvey Centennial Committee, because that was in 1987, and in 1987 was the centennial year of the birth of the Honourable Papa Marcus Garvey. And Brother Mandingo, who is sitting there, was instrumental in linking the Marcus Garvey Centennial Committee, to which I was chair, with Marcus Garvey Jr., for him to come here to lay the foundation stone at the Marcus Garvey, at the Tottenham Green Centre, which housed the Marcus Garvey Library. Now, what we, the African people of Tottenham, of London, and within Britain, wanted from Haringey is not a library in name, for it to be called the Marcus Garvey Library. What we wanted was a Pan-African library, a library what have the greatest depository of books about Garvey and African people globally. We did not achieve that, not because Haringey would not deliver. It's because we, the African, we always start something, run with that a little bit, and dash way further down the road. We did not maintain the resolution, the determination to see the project through. I remember during the centenary year where we seek permission from Haringey Council to put a banner across West Green Road. From 25 West Green Road, it starts across to the bakery opposite us. And I see brothers and sisters come underneath that banner and jump, and traffic was jammed in Tottenham. And because we as African people, in fact, Brother Imani, sitting right there, will tell you that he was his chief of security who ensured that when we put up that same banner outside the Tottenham Green Centre, he had to have men guarded night and day to ensure.
Absolutely.
The white people of Tottenham see that as an affront to their power and to their presence that we Africans want to exert our presence. And we have young men like Brother Imani, along with other young men, who said it is our duty, our responsibility to ensure that Marcus Garvey philosophy is put up bold and clear. And that was race first. And that is what the white people object to, race first. They're so racist. We said no. All of you practice race first and get very strong and powerful and riches out of it. And you want to keep it all to yourself. Well, that was Papa Garvey philosophy. That was Papa Garvey instruction. And we're here to practice it. And thanks to our young men, they did not falter in their duty. Now, coming back to the Marcus Garvey Library. The Marcus Garvey Library today is in name only. And if the Barrow have their way, they would get rid of it. In fact, the bus used to be in the foyer of the Tottenham Green Centre. So if you come into the centre, you don't have to go into the library to see Garvey's bus. And they fight tooth and nail to have it pushed back to the side. And they want to get rid of it. And I don't blame the white people. They know the spirit of Garvey and what Garvey's present, his image, will do to resurrect the dead minds of Africans. They want to make sure that don't happen. It's war. We don't expect our enemy to give us safe conduct and to assist us in our fight, because we're fighting them. And therefore, it is us who should stand firm. And sadly, the Marcus Garvey Centenary Committee is no more. We tried to resurrect it recently, and that one brother was very, very able, very knowledgeable, and was a force within that reinvigorated Marcus Garvey Centenary Committee. And he have it in his head that he want to own it. And when we try to make it clear to him that this is not to satisfy his individual ego, but it's first to resurrect the legacy of Marcus Garvey Library. He already cited his name, and before you know it, it come to naught. I say that to say that our foolish ego, our petty meism is what is crippling the race, because we have to look no further than the ideas, the philosophy, the practice of the Honourable Marcus Garvey through the UNIA and Africa's Community League of the World. In fact, all of us as organization in Britain, whether it's the Pan-African Congress movement to which three of us belong to, whatever organization that Brother Mandingo belonged to, and the numerous organizations that we form, and they're a damn waste of time. Because all we have to do, look at UNIA, become branches of it, and where we see that it needs any kind of tweaking, and I'll be very cautious in our tweaking, because it's probably our poor understanding why we'd want to tweak it. But given that time has changed, nothing stands still. When Garvey was alive and leading the movement, there was no WhatsApp, there was no Zoom, there was no big media network as we know them today. And look what Garvey was able to achieve. So we have all these new technology, new means of communication, new means of strengthening organization. We should be stronger, but in fact, we're weaker, because we call ourselves Garveyite, but have we really a Garveyite? And I would confess to say I'm not, but at least I recognize that I'm not, and I have to try harder, because we first have to read our own Bible, and that is the philosophy and opinions of the Honourable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, both volume 1 and 2, which normally comes in one volume, and volume 3, which we hardly talk about, because that is published and the copyright is owned by Frank Cass, and he want to keep it away from the rest of us. And we haven't done enough work to ensure that volume 3 of the philosophy of the Honourable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Philosophy and Opinions of the Honourable Marcus Garvey, is readily available. But Imani, you showed us a copy. That is volume 3. Now, on top of volume 3, and Brother Mandingo, Brother Cecil Godsmore, Brother Talker, and other people have spoken about reading about Garveyism. Our beloved brother Tony Martin, the world authority on Garvey and Garveyism, have left us volumes upon volumes of Marcus Garvey work. In particular, Race First. If we're only going to read 2 books, in fact I would say 3, and I better stop there because I've gone to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 and keep going. But if we stick with 3, the philosophy and opinions of the Honourable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, and Marcus Garvey's message to us, the people, his people, and of course, Race First. If we read nothing else, those 3 is a must read. And as a bookseller, it is my duty to ensure that I do my work and make those books available. All I want is when these books are available, and I tell you, and if you don't have a copy, buy one for yourself and buy at least one for your friend, even an enemy. Provided they take it from you, give it to them. Because is the best medicine for our brain. Now, I may not have answered Brother Tarker's question enough, and I may have to return to it. But so that I don't forget, one of the greatest things we must remember about Marcus Garvey is that Marcus Garvey, before Rasta, before Queen Mother Moore, before anybody else, talks about reparation. We may not hear it clearly out of his mouth in those terms, but let me remind you that Garvey's organization, the universal, meaning global, all of us, Negro, although it's not a nice word, but it means black, African, is us. The universal Negro, improvement, that word improvement need to be looked at. What does Garvey mean by improvement? Garvey find us crawling our bellies, having no self-respect, no pride of ourselves. And what Garvey wants to do to us is to say that you need to lift up the African spirit, the African personality, and be African by refocusing our mind away from Europe to Africa. That is what Garvey meant by improvement. And that is what we need to do yesterday. That's what we need to do today to ensure that we have a better tomorrow. So the word improvement must be underlined with Garvey and Garveyism. And I believe if we embrace Garvey's advice, Garvey's direction, and improve our mind, and by improving our mind, I'm talking about mind change. The way we think, the rebirth of the African mind, reparation, mind repair. If we embark on that road, we will have self-determination, real liberation. And with the permission of Brother Darker, I will prepare a presentation on that very subject. Because if we understand Garvey's stress, it was in the name of his organization, the Universal Negro Improvement Association. And today, we are weak-minded people. We're still thinking and seeing ourselves in the image and belief in others and not in ourselves. I'll stop there, and maybe Brother Darker may tweak out some more in terms of satisfying the question you raised.
Okay, yes. That was a very, very good background information as to the Marcus Garvey Library in Tottenham. So now when people walk past, they will have more of an idea how it came about and why it came about. I wanted to say that on joining the PACM, that was one of the very first function I actually attended. Remember, we came down from Birmingham with Brother Beanie, and the first time actually meeting Marcus Garvey Jr. was a great privilege. And just to say, during '87, I also remember that the main meeting was held in Manchester. And Brother Bunsen at the time was heading the branch in Manchester. And present, we had Queen Mother Moore herself at that particular meeting. That's something that stands out in my mind very clearly. Now we look at Garvey, and in terms of his name. I think there's very few people who have had the honor to have had their name used on so many occasions to actually denote things. And I'd just like to ask Nduga Mani briefly, because I know within the PACM, we actually used Marcus Garvey name in terms of the youth wing at the time. And we had the Marcus Garvey History Club, which Nduga Mani at the time was the chair. Could you just give us a little brief history, a little bit of background on the Marcus Garvey History Club, how it came about, and what was its purpose?
Yes, Nduga Mani, PACM member and African spiritualist practitioner and advisor. Yes, so back in the 90s, I believe it was about 91, 92, and there was 25 Head Start, 12 Road Head Start. And so many of us in the community up and down the country, not just in London, can say that 25 West Green Road was our university. It's a place where we used to go on a Sunday to hear the talks by all the brothers and sisters who were willing to speak. I know Baba Mandingo said he was spoken there, Brother Gobbin, Dobby Gobbin, Femi Biko. I remember Sarah Set speaking there, and so many people came through, and the books that the books that I just showed there, the person I got it from was from MZ Pepperkai from 25 West Green Road. That's where we got our, there's other New Beacon books and so on and so forth, but that was the one where a lot of us used to get our books from, and so with young people used to come around that 25 West Green Road and would show willing and come along to meetings and come to the Head Start meetings at 4 o'clock, as we're doing here. We do at 6 o'clock, we're at 4 o'clock on a Sunday, so it's wonderful that we're keeping the tradition. And members of the PACM, with particular MZ Pepperkai, identified young people like myself and said, how do you like to be involved, rather than first of all the same, become a member of Pan-African Congress movement, because that's a big commitment. They wanted to have use our enthusiasm and our wish to have knowledge and wish to do something for our race, even on a little scale. And so the Marcus Garvey History Club was formed, and I was asked to, as I was a PACM member, I was asked to be the chair of that. And so we had brothers and sisters who would come, who would form up the major committee of that. I remember with the other sister Jackie and Michael and Derek and others who came around in that small kind of group. And the first things that we were doing were just the meetings that we'd have at 25 West Green Road on a Wednesday evening upstairs, where the Sunday meetings would have. And also, as Pepper said, he asked us to help with the exhibition at the Marcus Garvey History Club, at the Marcus Garvey Library at the Tottenham Green Centre. And so with all the now I know, as looking back, that the exhibits that MJ Pepperkai had, copies of the Journals of the Black Man, of memorial plates, pictures, examples of the certificates for the Black Star Line, and so many more things that were put, that were displayed, and we helped, put those up, and other brothers and sisters from the community and members of PACM helped, who we had the bottom floor of the library there, and we were given a task to, when people came in, and they'd been agreed with the library, that we would take them around and explain to them. And there were so many people who had no idea, black people, young people coming, had no idea who Marcus Garvey was. And, because of our, experience and training of being involved with the Pan-African Congress movement, he was able to explain, and after MZ Pepperkai told us about the certificates, and it was an eye-opener for us as well. And yes, we did have to protect them. We put the race first banner up, we had to protect it. And explain to people why it was there, and there's a big old fuss in the local newspapers, but we stood firm, with the guidance of the elders from the Pan-African Conquest movement, and it stayed there. How can you have a Marcus Garvey library and you have no reference to his philosophies, and not, his philosophies should be spoken. So yes, so the Marcus Garvey History Club, grew from those Wednesday evenings at 25 West Green Road, and so much so that it was too small, and so we had to move to the African Caribbean. What's it? The
cultural center.
Cultural center. Sorry, I should know this. The cultural center. So Wednesday evening, we used to pack those out. And this was in the 90s, in the early 90s. We had all members of the community and young people coming in, and it came at just the right time. It came at a time where where the culture and the music, so hip hop was very much there was a thing of explaining our history and our culture and talking about black topics. There's many bands, Public Enemy, X-Clan, Ice-T, Ice Cube. There would be people who would be speaking on it and influenced by Garvey, particularly, the culture ones like X-Clan. And Red, Black and Green was all over the place, and that was a time when young people would be wearing their Africa pendants, and they'd be wearing their Red, Black and Green, and they'd be wearing these things that all relating back to Garvey, and so it really came at just the right time. So us were young people who didn't have families and were in college or university or apprenticeships and stuff would flock to this because there was a real thirst, and the philosophy of Garvey ran true for people, and it just grew and grew and opened our minds and our consciousness. And it's from that other people, other organizations, came along, and people knew about other organizations and were able to join those and be made aware of their race, of their history, their culture, and about being part of organization and what that means to be part of organization and committing yourself to that. So that was the and from there, if you were a member of the Marcus Garvey History Club, then it could lead to you become a member of the Pan-African Congress movement and making that further commitment. But that was a kind of training ground for young people to use that vehicle, and that vehicle that was very much a vehicle of the UNIA, of a youth wing, and bringing people in and exposing them to these topics and these ideas, and to elder activists could understand. And so I can speak clearly from my experience, that was a breeding was a absolutely core foundation for me. I would not be the person I am if it hadn't been for Pan-African Congress movement and for that Marcus Garvey History Club, and that led on to people going into universities and colleges and forming African societies, or African student groups, and having and inviting speakers to come around because you had this access, and so there's this real this real sowing seeds right across the country, and particularly in London. So yeah, it was a particularly strong time, and it just shows how much the influence of Garvey and how visionary he was, and everything that he said. He said he wasn't the only one who said it, but he took it. As Baba Mandinka says, the greatest Pan-African leader of all time. He was streets ahead, miles ahead. His vision of where Africa was and the threats that were for Africa and African people, we see right now, we see it, you know, continuing. He foresaw, you know, that Africa being under neo-colonial rule. He talked about, you know, I think it's in 1914 that he formed UNIA and African Communities League in Jamaica, and that was just a year before 1915 when D.W. Griffiths released Birth of a Nation, you know, which, you know, that clarion call for the KKK, and you know, promoted by the President Woodrow Wilson, caused massive lynchings across America, particularly in the Deep South. And so when Garvey landed in America in 1919, I believe, it was just right, because
1916.
1916, thank you, Baba. When he landed in 1916, it was just right, because, you know, it was very clear to African people, as it had been, that, you know, that the African people needed to protect themselves, and they needed their own homeland, and they needed to raise their own consciousness of who they were. And, you know, black is beautiful, Marcus Garvey. You know, the black man is God, Marcus Garvey. Black man is king. You know, you have your nation, up ye mighty race. These things are still being said, and it's telling that we don't have a biopic of Garvey. You can do everybody else, but you can't touch Garvey, because Garvey can't be diluted. Garvey is very clear. So, you know, I know that there were some films in the early 20s and 30s where they would do back to Africa stories, and they would be seen as the person would be a charlatan, and so on and so forth. And you would have mention of people who talked about Garvey's philosophy without mentioning Garvey as more propaganda. But there's never been a Garvey film. You know, Spike Lee hasn't done it. You know, all the others haven't done it. They won't touch Garvey, you know, because they won't get the funding for it. So for our black filmmakers out there, that's what we need. You know, Black Panther. You know, rest in power, Chadwick Boseman. But you know what, you know, even more so, the real Black Panther is Garvey, and obviously influenced the real black political group of the Black Panthers. So yeah, that was was what Marcus Garvey History Club was about. That's how it formed. You know, and you know, we had our how it's organized, and it was a great learning experience for young African people, and was really, you know, put in place for many of us who was involved in that, how we are today, and how we see the world.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, that was a good insight. Now, what I'd like to look at is, we mentioned that Garvey went to the Americas in 1916. Yeah, just after the unleashing of the Birth of a Nation, and as Brother Marnie explained, the wave of lynching taking place, especially in the Deep South. Now, really what I'd like to talk about now, or move the conversation on to, is Garvey's influence while he was in the United States. Because at that time, I think when Garvey arrived, you would have just had the beginnings of what was known as the Harlem Renaissance coming around. And one of the things that Garvey said he did was to travel extensively throughout the USA, you know, spreading his certain brand of philosophy and how he saw things. Now, we know that there's a lot of figures that became very notable later on that actually joined the Garvey movement. And so I'd just like to turn to Mandingo at the moment, just to fill us in amongst that, because I'll mention people like Elijah Muhammad and the father of Malcolm X. I know that there was many more that went into UNIA and learned a lot from what Garvey was teaching. So I just like Brother Mandingo just to develop that a bit more in terms of Garvey influence during his US days.
Yes. Let me just say also that, you know, as a member of PACM, I remember fondly those Sunday lectures upstairs at Head Start Books and Craft on Sundays, where I attended a lot of those lectures, and some of the lectures I was a speaker also. So I remember Femi Biko and several others who were in the audience when I spoke at several of those things. And I remember Brother Gobin and others, you know, who were speakers also. And Brother Pepokai, let me say, I am ready for us to reestablish the presence of Marcus Garvey at the Marcus Garvey Library. It must be done, and we are the ones to do it. We know that they have been trying to sideline Marcus Garvey there, as we have said, putting him, you know, out of the public vision, so to speak. And I'm sure you and I and others can work to reestablish that Marcus Garvey presence. And Marcus Garvey, in the same centenary year, 1987, that I got Marcus Garvey Jr. to come to to speak to the PACM people. I remember that one of the meetings that we had that he spoke at was in Tottenham at Gladesmore School on Gladesmore Road. That was a well-attended meeting. Gladesmore School, Gladesmore Road, nearby there in Tottenham that he spoke. And talking about the USA, Du Bois and others, they called their organization, which was established before the UNIA and the ACL, the NAACP. And the C in the NAACP stands for colored. Another version of colored now are people who not wanting to call themselves African say that they are people of color. Ridiculous. Everyone has color. Everyone has color. Everyone has melanin. I did biology at school. I did chemistry at school. Everyone. It's just that there are various degrees of melanin in individuals and in races. But everyone has some color. But what happened, people like Du Bois and so on, they did not want to identify themselves as Africans. And the organization, the NAACP, was actually funded and controlled by European Gentiles and Jews. In fact, if my memory serves me right, the only time that an African became the head of the NAACP wasn't until sometime in the 1960s. And this was an organization that started, again, if my memory serves me right, which I'm pretty sure, in 1909. And yet an organization that is supposed to be dealing with African people. They never had an African as a so-called head until the 1960s. It was always some European Jew or Gentile. Goes to show you. And they used people like Du Bois, who was jealous of Marcus Garvey's popularity, as fronts. And when they had no use for him, they kicked him out. And what is ironic is that Du Bois, who was always, and others like him, who was always teasing Marcus Garvey, you know, someone is saying Brother Pepokai needs to turn the light on in his room, as we won't be able to see him. Okay, right. Anyhow, is that Marcus Garvey's organization, founded the 20th of July, 1914, 5 days after returning to Jamaica from England on a ship, right? was called the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. There's a tendency for people to just say UNIA and leave up, but the name of the organization is the UNIA and ACL. And let me dissect what this means, because it's very important to what happened in the States and elsewhere for African people. Marcus Garvey, the first time he left Jamaica, he lived and worked in Costa Rica, Panama, and other places like that. So Marcus Garvey actually spoke Spanish. Black in Spanish is Negro. And that is coming from the Latin word Niger, N-I-G-E-R, which is a Latin meaning black. And I did Spanish and Latin at school in Jamaica. So when I give the vocabulary where the word Negro is coming from, I know what I'm talking about. I did Spanish at school in Jamaica, and I did it at school, Latin also. As Brother Pepokai said, Universal Negro Improvement Association. That means the black, because Negro means black, needs to be improved. In line with, as Brother Pepokai said, this is reparations, because reparations is both us repairing and also us getting from those who are our enemies. Okay? But part of reparations is our repairs, internal. So UNIA, the Universal Black Improvement Association, that needs to be improved, and African Communities League. And the word black or Negro was in direct opposition to the colored in the NAACP. Because Marcus Garvey was saying, we are not any colored people. We are black. We are African in reality. So you notice, and African Communities League. It's not the ACL and UNIA. No, it is not the ACL and the UNIA. It is the UNIA, meaning the Black Improved Association. And when you are improved, then you will be in the total reality of the African Communities League. And who else can be in an organization called the African Communities League if you are not African? So the African Communities League. So at the very end, Marcus Garvey is saying, whether you're saying black or Negro, and we are not colored, we are Africans. So when you improve and you repair yourself, you know you're in the African Communities League. So Marcus Garvey, in one fell swoop, he knew what he was doing. You have to start somewhere. The UNIA. So we have to improve, we have to work, to repair, to recover. And then when we have recovered and sorted things out, then we have the real thing, the African Communities League. And what is the African Communities League? Our African communities are worldwide, in Africa and outside of Africa. And what do? We operate nationally and internationally. Marcus Garvey influence on the Harlem Renaissance. A lot of the writers, Langston Hughes and many others, were influenced by Marcus Garvey. A lot of the writers and poets in the Harlem Renaissance had their work first published in Marcus Garvey's paper, The Black World, aka the Negro world. I explain Negro, Black, Spanish. G. Carter Woodson spoke, the one who was later, African History Week, then African History Month. Marcus Garvey gave him that platform. Claude McKay, that poet from Jamaica, If We Must Die, which Winston Churchill used, was helped by Marcus Garvey's UNIA and ACL. I spoke about Malcolm X's mother and father. Father African from the States, mother African from Grenada. Yes. We talk about Elijah Poole, later known as Elijah Muhammad, who was a member of Marcus Garvey's UNIA and ACL, even though later on they tried to distort history and tell lies that he was not a member. But Elijah Poole was a member of Marcus Garvey's UNIA and ACL. Just like in Jamaica, Leonard Howell, Hibbert, Dunkley, and Hines, who later became the founding fathers of Rasta in Jamaica, were members of Marcus Garvey's UNIA and ACL. Marcus Garvey, with his travels all over the USA, working to build the divisions, working to have the factories established, because Marcus Garvey knew that politics and economics went together. And J. Edgar Hoover, later the head of the FBI, and other enemies of Marcus Garvey, both internal and external, got particularly afraid of Marcus Garvey when Marcus Garvey started to embark on the next step in his program in the USA. What was the final step for Marcus Garvey in the USA, as we are talking about? He had established the organization, which was an organization to uplift and help our people in the US and elsewhere. He had established factories, the Black Star Line, ships, and the purpose of the Black Star Line was not to put all Africans outside of Africa on ships to go. No, the purpose of the Black Star Line was primarily economic, was to facilitate trade, economic empowerment between Africans worldwide. That was the primary purpose of the Black Star Line. But the final thing that Marcus Garvey was moving on, which was why his enemies moved so hard against him, was Marcus Garvey was saying that in the days of Booker T. Washington, and he was inspired also by Booker T's Washington book, Up From Slavery, Booker T publicly said we should stay away from politics, deal just with economics and self-improvement. But Marcus Garvey knew that that was just a temporary strategy by Booker T. Washington. He knew that at some stage we had to become politically involved. And Marcus Garvey's final step was establishing the political presence of Africans in the USA, that we would use our African voting power, get ourselves registered and so on, but use our voting power to increase our to develop political clout. The same way that Jews and other ethnic groups in the state are into politics, because they use politics to assist their economics and use their economics to assist their politics. And this move by Marcus Garvey was what unnerved the racists, because they saw that this man was totally serious, this man of vision. Because what Marcus Garvey was doing in terms of political empowerment would have a decisive factor in the decision-making process in the states, because it would be the marrying of our economic empowerment with our political organization. This was what they feared. And so they moved against him. But we still have this. And this is why Marcus Garvey said, and we must continue to practice this, we must have our exclusive political organizations. We will have temporary allies, because this is a world of politics, but never permanent allies. Our only permanent interests are our African interests, because the ally of today is the enemy of tomorrow. This is how it is. And this is why when you are a Garveyite, meaning a Pan-Africanist, you would not vote, as most of our people did in the USA, for a Barack Obama or for a Kamala Harris just because one of their parents is African, or even if both their parents were African. Why? We must only vote when we have negotiated and say we have this as our agenda. For you to get our votes, you have to fulfill these demands that we have on our agenda. To vote otherwise means you're allowing yourself to be used and abused. And this is what has been happening in the USA. As Malcolm X, whose parents were Pan-Africanists, Garveyites, as Malcolm X said, there's no difference. He was saying what Garvey was saying. There's no difference between a Republican and a Democrat, because both of them are racist, and both of them created, owned, and controlled by Europeans in the US, are seen about European interests. You notice that when in the 1960s, late 60s, early 70s, they had a so-called Black Caucus in Congress. What has the so-called Black Caucus in Congress, comprised of both Democrats and Republicans, done for African people in the USA and abroad? Absolutely nothing. Members of the so-called, members of the so-called Black Caucus, comprised of Democrats and Republicans, were the ones who fought against President Mugabe and other Zimbabweans who had reclaimed our land. So it goes to show that we need to have, as Marcus Garvey said, a political organization that is totally and absolutely dedicated to pursuing our political interests, because politics is intrinsically tied to economics and vice versa.
Okay, right. So we can see how Marcus Garvey influence in the United States was in terms of the kind of personality he had influence. And I mentioned the Harlem Renaissance earlier because, as you know, that was the cutting edge that was being used to show so-called Black development in the United States, that everybody will be looking to that. And just that we see, because at the time, when you read about the Harlem Renaissance, Garvey's kind of excluded out of that. But when you examine it closely, you can see how influential, just how influential he was. Now, just before I move on, there's a question here we can look at, and it's by Monica. And she said, please, can you explain the importance of the ritual? That's okay. She was asking to explain the libation. So when I think we leave that towards when we're winding up, then you can explain
brother,
that.
No problem. I'll do that.
Let me just say, when it comes on to the Harlem Renaissance, and I named some of the people who Marcus Garvey's organization helped, got their works first published, etc. Read Brother Tony Martin's book about Garvey and the Harlem Renaissance. There's a book that goes into detail where that is concerned.
Right. So now I like to move on now and look in terms of Garvey's influence in terms of the continent. Because we
Yes.
can start off by saying we know Nkrumah made no secret that Garvey had heavily influenced him. In fact, during his studies at Lincoln University and others, he said he attended many meetings of the UNIA. And other leaders in Africa was also very heavily influenced by Garvey. And I did read somewhere that even the people that started the ANC lent very heavily on Garvey philosophy when the ANC was first started. So I'll just open this one up. And who would like to? Anybody would like to?
I want us come in on this.
Yeah. You got a chance. So I don't know if Elder Pepperkai, for instance, if you'd like to make a contribution to this. And just before we start, remember, very recently, the president of Ghana came out and gave a little speech. And in it, he himself said how, well, he in fact described Nkrumah as a disciple of Garvey. And through Nkrumah, he's saying how heavily Ghana, more than any other country in Africa, adopted a lot of the philosophies of Garvey, because as you mentioned earlier, the flag, the Black Star line, the shipping line, they call the Black Star line, Black Star squares, and so forth, was heavily influenced. So could you name some of the other personalities that you think during in Africa, on the continent, that was very much heavily influenced by Garveyism?
Before Brother Mandingo come in, you mentioned the current president of Ghana talking about
I just mentioned it.
Garvey's contribution. Yes, that was a opportune statement from the president. This is not sincere at all. And that was just to boost up tourism. Because that same president, as we speak, is putting a whole heap of money in building a cathedral in Ghana, Christian cathedral, and he come back with a stone that he gets from Israel to lay the foundation stone. All that money should go towards building something like what's in Senegal, an African cultural monument, an African cultural center, something of relevance, instead of a stupid backward church.
Well, all I would have to say to that,
does not mean,
we know people are, I would say it's better something than nothing. The fact that he came out and mentioned Garvey and mentioned something about Garvey would have now got into a lot of people's mind who wasn't aware who Garvey was. And that would have pushed them to now go and find out more about Garvey. We know a lot of them are opportunists, yes, and we use certain things, but the fact is he could not get away from mentioning Garvey when it came to Nkrumah. They're so integrally intertwined. So like you said, now it's up to the people of, say, Ghana now to really examine what he's doing and what he said and hold him to task. How can you be talking about Garvey and look at the example of Garvey and then doing the opposite?
That's my very point, Brother Darker.
Precisely.
People will come up and say they're Garveyite and they support Garvey, but that's just words. And it's sincere. That is the key.
Mm-hmm.
This particular president is like in Jamaica when they talk about teaching Garvey in school.
Mm-hmm.
They are not sincere. And what we should do, and I'm glad you raise the point is to hold their feet to the fire and make sure they don't make these statements in an hypocritical fashion and they deliver upon what they say. But I'll give it to Brother Mandingo.
Yes. First of all, I totally agree and endorse what Brother Pepekai has said. Nana Ado statement about Marcus Garvey was totally self-seeking and opportunistic. And we must not pet and powder opportunists. This is deadly. We must not fool our people who are not politically educated. It's very dangerous. And I'm glad that Brother Pepekai brought that out, because if he hadn't said it, I would have said it. This guy is an opportunist. He did no favor, absolutely none, right? And we have to call a spade, as my mother always said. We don't play around. This is for real. This same president is the one who is not doing anything to help to get rid of AFRICOM in Africa, which is the U.S. military presence in Africa. In fact, he wanted to allow the USA to have a military base in Ghana. The same president. It is because people came out, both abroad, including myself, and in Ghana, against this. The same president. So he's no Pan-Africanist, and we must be careful of lip service. It's the same thing in Jamaica. Marcus Garvey is a national hero, yet Marcus Garvey's philosophy and opinion is not a part of the curriculum in Jamaican schools. Lip service.
Okay.
Lip service. A serious situation. And this thing, earlier I spoke about the importance of imagery in terms of what you think the creator is. In this president wanting to build a Christian cathedral in Ghana, this is to further mental enslavement using Christianity. This is absolutely dangerous and must be resisted. None of our monies in Africa should be used to build any mosques or churches. And let me tell you, I have Africans who are Muslims. While they want us to respect their Islam and their Christianity, they fight and destroy African shrines and religions and murder Africans who practice our traditional religions. Brother Imani, people like you in Africa, in Muslim countries, are hounded, persecuted, and killed as unbelievers.
Absolutely.
This is no joke thing. This is serious. The Christians do the same thing too. Remember, our religions and our spiritualities were banned. If our ancestors were found practicing our religions and spiritualities in the USA, in Britain, in wherever, they were killed. The same way if they were found speaking our African languages. So this is totally serious. And Marcus Garvey knew this. So I definitely see through the opportunism of the president of Ghana. He's not genuine. On the one hand, talking about Marcus Garvey, but on the other hand, doing things the very opposite of Marcus Garvey to push the enslavement of African minds using Christianity, worshiping some blonde, blue-eyed guy as God. That's the intention. Very serious. And this is why you hear a lot of our people, and anytime they say this, they get angry with me, that Jesus is their savior. I said, Jesus is not your savior. The creator is your savior. They said, but Jesus is the creator. No! Jesus is...
So the question was now, which leaders then do you think Garvey had a positive influence on?
Kwame Nkrumah in his autobiography said, He was not just heavily influenced. Kwame Nkrumah, in his autobiography, said that of all the literature that he read, the one that inspired him the most was the philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey. Nnamdi Azikiwe, the Igbo Pan-Africanist from Nigeria, was a Garveyite. Nnamdi Azikiwe, the Igbo Pan-Africanist, was a Garveyite. Almost all of the members of the ANC leadership were members of the UNIA and ACL. I repeat, almost all the members of the ANC in South Africa, Azania, were members of the UNIA and ACL. The King of Swaziland said he knows of only 2 Africans in the diaspora: Johnson the boxer and Marcus Garvey. At the 1920 convention, Pan-Africanist convention in New York City, that filled Madison Square Gardens, and it wasn't a stage show. So it was Marcus Garvey who filled Madison Square Gardens, 1920, where the red, black, and green flag was adopted. Many of the delegates came from Mother Africa, and there were secret sessions that they had with Marcus Garvey because of the colonial situation in Africa. They could not meet openly because of spies and so on. This shows you Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey's paper that was published in English, French, and Spanish was available in all the colonies in Africa. And the papers were banned. If you were found with them, the French or the British or the Portuguese, Spanish, would imprison you or execute you. But the papers were there. So it shows you the influence of Marcus Garvey. South Africa had the most UNIA and ACL divisions, more than any other country in Africa. Just as in Cuba, in the Caribbean, Cuba had the most UNIA and ACL divisions in the Caribbean. And guess what? Trinidad had more UNIA and ACL divisions than Jamaica.
Yeah, we know that.
So the influence of Marcus Garvey in Mother Africa, I mean, I've just given some examples there. There were divisions in every country. Every country. You know, and I named Nnamdi Azikiwe from Nigeria. I named in Kenya also, you know, members there were influenced by Marcus Garvey. And by the way, there's no mama in Kenya. It's the British who made up that stupid word. The name that the Kenyan freedom fighters gave for their organization, which was led not by Jomo Kenyatta, but Dedan Kimathi, was the Land and Freedom Army. The Land and Freedom Army. And you see the locks that you see Rastas in Jamaica had, because Hibbert and Howell and others, they never had any locks and things. They never did. It was in the 1950s when the Land and Freedom Army, Dedan Kimathi and others, had locks. They didn't trim their hair. And some members of the Rasta movement in Jamaica saw those images. I remember seeing those images in the Jamaica Gleaner, Daily Gleaner in Jamaica, and started to locks their hair. It was, they took that because of what they saw the Land and Freedom Army people in Kenya did. And those Land and Freedom Army people were inspired by Marcus Garvey. Remember, the Land and Freedom Army people in Kenya said, when the Europeans came, we had our land and they had the Christian Bible. But after a while, we had their Christian Bible and they had our land. So Marcus Garvey, people in Ghana, they know what Marcus Garvey is about. It's in our flag. They know. But what the present president is trying to do, he's playing a double game. He's trying to pretend as if he's supportive of Marcus Garvey, but he doesn't want that because he is operating as a neo-colonial puppet. He and his father were actually enemies of President Kwame Nkrumah. I'm telling you that straight. Enemies. Why? Because President Kwame Nkrumah was about the Pan-Africanist agenda of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. So in war, it is always important to know who are enemies and who are friends. And remember, we are fighting a battle on two fronts. On the external front, we have the Europeans and other races wanting our continent. And on the internal front, we have the traitors.
Okay, the other part.
Yeah, Asante Sana, Baba.
Yeah,
Asante Sana.
Now, we're coming to the end, so in the last 10 minutes or so. Now, as we know, Garvey lived the last days out in London and died here. And I think he was buried at Kensal Rise, if I'm right.
Yes, Kensal Green.
Kensal Green Cemetery. And then I think it was, what, 1964 when Siago had
1964.
his body repatriated.
Yes.
Now, it was Edward Siago that kind of fronted that. What motives?
Not true.
No, well, I'm just saying what came out.
Yeah, but I'm making that correction.
All right. Well, that's good. Well, that's good that you can clear the top because the saying was Siago headed to get Garvey's body moved back to Jamaica, as you know, and he became the first national hero. So the question is, what role did Siago have in that endeavor? And two, in 2020 Jamaica, how respected do you think the name Garvey has, and how much clout do you think the name Garvey has? As I mentioned before, I knew of Marcus Garvey Technical High in St. Anne's Bay. They named the school directly after him. And what other, you could say, is examples like that scattered throughout Jamaica, because that was the place of his birth. And as we know, that's where his bones today lie.
I will tell you others.
So just how much respect you think Garvey now foster in Jamaica as a whole?
Well, Marcus Garvey still resonates with African people in Jamaica. Besides that Marcus Garvey Technical School, there's a school in Clarendon known as the technical school too, called Garvey Mosiah School. Mosiah was an African from Cuba. School in Clarendon is called Garvey Mosiah. So that's another thing. There's also Marcus Garvey Drive that formerly was known as Foreshore Road. There's Marcus Garvey Drive. Okay. There's also Liberty Hall at King Street, which, you know, is there. The Marcus Garvey Liberty Hall. You go there and you will, it's an archive for things with Marcus Garvey and so on. And this is at it's at King Street near to the Ward Theatre. Okay, it was originally Marcus Garvey's Liberty Hall in Jamaica. So that is also there. What is needed is that we must push to have the philosophy and opinions as a compulsory textbook in Jamaican schools. It still is not. In terms of Siaga with Marcus Garvey's body, it was a Garveyite, I don't remember his name at the time, who and others and other Garveyites who were pushing for the return of Marcus Garvey's body. And they approached the JLP government. And at the time, the ministry that was responsible for such matters was the ministry headed by Edward Siaga. So it was those people who pressured the JLP government of Alexander Bustamante. And that portfolio department where that would have to be dealt with was the ministry where Edward Siaga was the minister. I think it was of social development and something, right? So it wasn't him. It came from the Garveyites, and of course, he ran with it because, again, it was political opportunism. Because they say, oh, see, I didn't fight against and resist this demand that Marcus Garvey's body should be returned. Because at the time, Kwame Nkrumah was advocating for Marcus Garvey to be buried in Ghana, in Accra. So the Jamaican JLP regime realized how would it look that Marcus Garvey was going to be buried in Accra, in Ghana, because of Kwame Nkrumah, President Kwame Nkrumah. And so they moved quickly when they were approached by Garveyites, as I said. And that was how it was. So it wasn't any idea of Edward Siaga. It was not. It suited the political facelift for the JLP party at the time. And I'm glad that I have managed to highlight this in this forum.
Yeah, that's good. Elder Peppercar, you got anything around that? So,
no, I want to return back to the Marcus Garvey Library here in town. And I also want to touch briefly on one of the major contributions that the youth wing of the PACM, to which Brother Imani, so admirable champion, was that as a group of young people, they were able to bring over Sister Soldier. I can't remember where this concert was held, but I'm certain it was in London.
Liverpool, Baba.
Right.
It's Liverpool, Elder. It's in Liverpool.
And here's a group of young people who was able to connect with a giant in the hip-hop movement like Sister Soldier, that we know was a committed sister when it comes to advancement of African consciousness and African development. And the youth wing, brought her over to a very well successful concert in Liverpool. And I want to go back to the Marcus Garvey Library. As I said earlier, as a living legacy to Marcus Garvey, we didn't want a library namesake like the C.L.R. James Library in Hackney. We wanted to be a repository of African books to spread knowledge, not just the people of Tottenham, people of Haringey, the people of Britain, London, but it's to ensure that this legacy of this great African leader, and Haringey resisted, and they was only able to get away with it because we, the African people, fall down on the job. I'm saying that to say that we can achieve anything we set out to achieve if we're fully committed and we resolutely discipline ourselves, come what may, to fight, to build, and to maintain anything of benefit that we set out to do. Sadly, we become distracted, fight amongst ourselves, and all that gains have been lost. Because when they sold the Minister building on Seven Sisters Road and moved the council services into the Tottenham Green Centre, they wanted us to close down the Marcus Garvey Library. And when they couldn't close it all down, they wanted to greatly reduce it. And a group of young people organized, resisted, and put a stop to it. Of course, they get a little bit too sectarianist, and therefore, instead of opening it up to older people like ourselves who have the experience, they see us as old fogies getting in the way, and they went their own way. And that is why we attempt to set up the Marcus Garvey, we work to resuscitate the Marcus Garvey Centennial Committee. But as Brother Mandingo said, that he's standing by ready. So we haven't given up ensuring that the Marcus Garvey Library is not just a name, but truly reflect the aims, the philosophy, and objectives of the Honourable Marcus Garvey. And we, the people here in Tottenham, has that duty and that responsibility.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that should be said was there was a permanent exhibition in the Marcus Garvey Library which was removed, and also a lot of the books on the shelf, African books, is also removed, and I think they stuck it in a jumper sale and sold them off.
In fact, Brother Talk, I'm very, very glad that you mentioned that, because Brother Mani, in his contribution, mentioned having a month-long exhibition inside that very Marcus Garvey Library, and that had memorabilia of Marcus Garvey and the UNIA, posters, T-shirt, books. Was a massive exhibition, and people used to come from not just here in Tottenham, not just in London, but up and down the country to see this exhibition. A lot of that memorabilia was my own personal collection and was loaned to the library. And when they was dismantling the library and wanted to smash it up, I had to go and rescue it. And some of the items came back broken, some was missing, and I've yet to approach Haringey Council to replace those items, because we lent it to them without charge, but they return them damaged and missing, and they have a responsibility to make good those losses. But because of the pressure and all the workload, we have managed to approach them, but we're not going to leave it by.
Brother Pepekai,
Definitely.
in terms of what you just said, I am willing to write an official letter on our behalf demanding compensation and other forms for those items.
We appreciate that, my brother. We're gonna do it.
Yes, I will personally, you know, I'm a writer. I will personally do this. And I'm glad the name of the man who pressured the JLP government at the time in terms of Marcus Garvey's body returning. And so this was why he and Edward Seaga, the minister for that department, had discussions about it. His name was Leslie Alexander. Remember that. Leslie Alexander.
Okay. Okay.
Asante Sana, brother.
Asante Sana.
Yeah, good news for that. So I'm sure, I hope the listeners have learned a lot, because there's a lot of things, especially from Brother Mandingo, that come out that is new to me. And I'm glad we had this discussion, because the more we look at Garvey, it seems the more we are finding. Because I remember, I think when Tony Martin did a tour one time, and remember we had him in Birmingham, we were just sitting around and talking to him, and he told us of a place in New York where there was some kind of collector, and he would just buy up everything he could with Garvey on, and it's had this big warehouse where he would just deposit it. And he said even him as a researcher would love to get access to that place. And somebody was just hoarding everything to do with Garvey and locking it away from public access. So as we know,
information
that's
is power.
it. So as we know, there's a lot more to come. And as you mentioned, Brother Marnie, about the film, we have seen they made one on Nat Turner. Recently, we've seen they made one of Harriet Tubman. But still, nobody is brave enough to touch Garvey.
Well, we can make it, you know. The technology and things. So we don't have to wait on anyone.
Yeah.
We will make it.
With, you know, with technology now.
Precisely.
Remember, Nollywood, the brother who started Nollywood, started film with mobile phones. And
Exactly.
that's how it started, just using mobile phones, and look at it now. So really, where there's a will, there's a way. Because
we will make our Marcus Garvey. We are the ones who must make it. And we have the technology at our fingertips. It's not like the first time. Technology is there, we have the will, and we have the way. So no need to complain.
That's it.
That's what we're gonna do.
We should make it ourselves.
Because others who do it and tell lies, misinformation, like that liomentary, as I call it, that was put out. Liomentary. I have to tell you this, Marcus Garvey Jr., when he first told me that a documentary was gonna be made and that's gonna be good, I said to him, Marcus, I'm talking Marcus Jr., do you trust these people who are gonna put it out? And he said, yes, man, yes, man. He said that they're gonna speak with him and they're gonna speak with Tony Martin and so on. Yes, they did. But you know what they did? They only gave him and Tony Martin a few minutes. And they gave enemies and liars on Marcus Garvey, including some Caucasian, a lot of time to tell lies. And the guy who was involved was some guy named, I think, called Stanley Nelson. Yes. Told lies. It was and Robert Hill, another enemy of Marcus Garvey, he was involved with that too. Yes. Marcus Garvey Jr., he was shocked and he said, Mandingo, you did warn me, because I said, listen, yes, they'll interview you, but you're not in control of the editing. You're not in control of the output. And so said, so done. But we have the technology to put things right. And right we will. Yes, indeed.
Yes. So,
Ashe.
You know, as this month draws to a close, I think it's in Garvey's 133 years, we can see that Garvey marches on. Because my time in Africa, every time I go to Africa, two names, say from the Caribbean, come up constantly. And as you know, that's Bob Marley and Marcus Garvey. In fact, in Senegal, they have a wall, murals painted on the wall. Figures such as Cabral and Nkrumah, and of course you have Garvey is up there. So wherever you go, he's entrenched in people's mind. And what encourages me now is that more of the youth to hear the name Garvey on their lips.
Especially.
Yeah, especially.
now with
Especially
the
now
prizes
when they
in
look at,
America,
when
even
they're
that's
beginning to
confused at
understand.
times.
That's it.
Garvey's name comes up again and
Garvey's
again.
name
Malcolm
come up.
X, Garvey.
Garvey was right. We need to be self-reliant. We
Mhm.
need to do this. We need to do this. We need to follow more the philosophy and opinion of Marcus Garvey. So what I'm saying, Garvey was an extraordinary individual, even though he's been an ancestor now 80 years. You know, his influence knows no bounds.
And let me say this, reggae music. Reggae music has helped immeasurably in keeping alive Marcus Garvey. And let me just name just 3 out of many. The Mighty Diamonds with the songs, The Right Time Now, Identity, and so on. Culture, Joseph Hill and his group, Two Brother Culture. Yeah, 2/7's Clash and so on, Marcus Garvey. And of course, more than any other artist, the Burning Spear was also born in St. Anne's Bay, like Marcus Garvey. Personifies that reggae role in keeping the memory and the philosophy and opinions and practice of Marcus Garvey alive through reggae music, the music of the grassroots Africans of Jamaica.
I'd just like to add to that what Baba has said, that the new age roots and culture, people like Jar 9 are keeping Garvey alive, and to a new generation, and they're coming against it, and using that to counteract the slackness and bringing back Garvey hard. So so it absolutely, as the Baba said, we have the reggae, roots and culture, Burning Spirit and so forth, but it's still alive and coming back as a counteraction to the madness that we see happening in the Caribbean, and particularly in Jamaica and across the world.
Yes.
That's all right. And just as we are coming to a close now, just like Brother Marnie, who's going to close out. So if you can get ready. And just to say that Garvey's that little blue book, that little white book with the message to the people.
Course of African philosophy.
Message to the people. I remember when I joined in Birmingham via the African Caribbean Circle Organization, every Sunday at our Carter training, we went through that from cover to cover.
Absolutely.
That was part of our Carter training. We had to go through a message to the people, Garvey's lessons. So, and that's something I recommend anybody. It's as relevant today as the day it was written.
Absolutely.
Message to the people in terms of a training manual. Absolutely brilliant.
Absolutely, and that leads very much onto what I was going to say, because the sister asked about the significance of the ritual that I did at the beginning, and the significance is that, as Baba Mandingo said, the African Communities League, the UNI, is about improvement of the African. It's about us becoming back to ourselves. And so it's using Tibetan terms, it's using Kiswahili terms to talk about African spirituality that goes through all the African traditions, whether it's Bodon, whether it's Obia, whether it's Yoruba, whether it's Akan. We have these notes of that there is the creator, the one indivisible creator, manifests itself through the cosmic forces, and the cosmic forces are leading to and our nearest spiritual connection is our ancestors, who take our requests and take our intentions to manifest the world that we wish to see. And so the ritual is to connect us back to our traditions. It is our traditions that will save us. It's our traditions at the basis of having a Martian culture. Mart stands for truth, harmony, balance, reciprocity, natural order, and the love of the all. This is at the basis of our highest culture, and all our traditions have that. They call it different things, but they all have it there. And why people run to different religions like Islam and like Judaism and like Christianity is because enemies have taken our concepts, changed it, kept the kernel of it, and then fed it back to us bastardized. And so we don't recognize it, but we can see the truth in it. And what we should be doing, as Marcus Garvey and the Bible said, is go back to our tradition, take the best of our traditions, take the best of African spirituality, and use that for our liberation. And so that is the idea. The idea is as well that I wasn't pouring water at the beginning because can't do that at the communal, but we can give the essence of our energy as an offering to the ancestors. You can give offerings of palm wine, you can give offerings of water, but you can give your actual energy as an essence, as your commitment to your creator and to the cosmic forces that are not outside of you, that are within you. As the Bible was saying, the Abrahamic faiths say that we're born in sin, and the African sense is no, we are divine beings having a divine human experience. We are God. We are not the same quality. We're not the same quantity as the Creator, but we're of the same quality. And once we stop being, as Imfudisi Jehutin says, as long as when we stop being upside down, inside out, and back to front, and come back to ourselves, we can create the reality. There's nothing that can stop us. And this is what Marcus Garvey said, up you mighty race, you can accomplish what you will. What you will. Will is an incredibly powerful concept. It's your consciousness. What you can visualize, you can do. And when we capture that, we understand that. And if that wasn't true, why did Europeans talk about manifest destiny? It's what they visualized and what they wanted to see, and they brought that into visualization. And that is why they take things like the Cleopatra's needle, which isn't a needle, doesn't belong to Cleopatra. That belongs to Alsar and Haru. And it's the black phallus. They have the black man's penis in Turkey, in Paris, in America, in London. And if our traditions are so weak and backward, why do they have in their seats of power our traditions? And that tradition of that Tekken, of that's what it actually is talking about the essential life force, pointing to Nut, the cosmos, and thus coming into being all things. This is the power of our things. We don't have these childish concepts of Christianity and Judaism and Islam. We don't have these concepts. These are childish. These are things thou shalt not do. We do not do those things. We take responsibility for ourselves. So that is the nature of what we was doing. And as Ndugu Tahaka was saying, taking it back to Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey was such a visionary, and just reading over the message to the people when he's talking about spirituality. You know, when I first read this as a young man, this went over my head. I didn't understand it. But now, as I've grown older and become more in connection with my spirituality, I understand how forward thinking he was. So here is what, before I end our session with our ritual, this is what Garvey said on spirituality from Message to the People. And it's about improvement. It's absolutely, the UNIA was about improving the African, not only getting freedom, but improving us. And that's where Elijah Muhammad took it for the Nation of Islam, that idea of improving us. He said, man never dies, nothing dies. Man is made of body and spirit. The spirit is God. It is intelligence. The body of man is matter. It changes from living matter in the man to other matter in the soul. It is always the same matter. It doesn't die. It changes. When man sleeps and passes away in the flesh, he goes to earth that lives on, out of which other men and things are formed. You are related to the flower, the beautiful rose, the trees, the fish, and the other animals, just as you are related to God. Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey was a sage. that is deep African spiritual thought right there. And when I was in my 20s and I didn't understand it, and I wrote that, and that's something I wrote 20 odd years ago, and knew that it was powerful. I didn't understand it then, but I understand it now. As Baba Mandingo said, the greatest Pan-Africanist leader we had in all aspects. There wasn't a part that he was weak on. There was not a part he was weak on. Not at all.
Total.
So,
and by the way, Brother Imani, just one second. It is Brother Tony Martin, my friend, from Port of Spain, Trinidad, who subtitled it, the message to the people. What Marcus Garvey called it, the World Private Lessons, is the course of African philosophy.
Yes, absolutely.
It's the course of African philosophy. Private lessons to select students like President General Charles James, who came here in the 80s. Vice President.
It wasn't for everybody. It wasn't for everybody. It's for the leadership. It's for the leadership. And that was the beauty of it, you know. And so as we an organization, you know, that was our, you know, the key work that we had to study. And I haven't read anything in the message to the people that doesn't apply today, and that we cannot apply in our organizations now and improve if we applied what is in the message to the people.
Timeless.
So in that, I hope that answers for the sister about that. And if you have a question, if you put it into, when this is on YouTube, and if you put a question in the description box, you put a question, then we can see that and we can try and answer that if there's more you want to know about African spirituality. But you know, if you join the Pan-African Congress movement, that's where we teach about African spirituality as well. So I hope that answered it. We're now going to end because we gave respect and honor to the all, that is all things, as Marcus Garvey brilliantly explained. And now we've called into our presence the cosmic forces and the ancestors. And now what we have to do is now allow them to come out of this fourth dimensional realm. Fourth dimension, because there's three dimensions: up, down, left, right, back and forth, and time. Fourth dimension. But they must go back to their other realm, and they can take our intentions and help us manifest our objectives that we wish to see out of our consciousness, out of our Haru consciousness. And so what we're going to do is we're going to ring the chime again and do guitar. I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
So if you can just share that, so that's up on the screen. Wonderful. So I'm going to ring the chime, play the chime, the triangle chime, that vibration, because the all is one vibration manifested in many forms, as Marcus Garvey was saying. And we're going to have gratitude for the forces and the ancestors being with us. The creator is always with us, because the creator is within us, our higher selves, Nebuchadnezzar, Lord of all in Kemetic terms. That's what Nebuchadnezzar means, Lord of all within us. So us becoming one with the creator within us, with nature. And we're going to have gratitude, and we're going to be thinking of that we have a closer connection with the cosmic forces and our ancestors, that we continue to listen to their guidance, and that they help us to manifest our objectives. That's what we should be thinking about. So again, if I can ask people, if you wish to take part, you know, African spirituality is not about coercion. Just want to listen and watch, that's absolutely fine. If you sit up straight, if you breathe deeply, and close your eyes, forget about where you've been, forget what you're going to do, and be present here, where all things are possible. Everything that has happened, everything that will happen, everything that's going to happen is happening now, and we can access that vibration. So what we're going to do is I'm going to play the triangle chime 4 times, because 4 is the spiritual number for health and for foundation and growth. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to grow ourselves, and then by growing ourselves, grow our communities, and by growing our communities, grow our race and grow our organizations. Let the chime go around you, through you, and over you. And then please join me in the affirmation. Close the ritual. All parts are people, and the will of the all is our will. Nguvu zote kwa watu wetu, na mapenzi ya wote ni mapenzi yetu. Asante sana.
People. Yeah. Okay. All power score people.
Karibu.
Yes.
Karibu, Baba.
Asante sana, ndugu Amani.
You're welcome.
For that.
Asante
Now, we've come to the end again this week, but remember, we're on every Sunday between 6 and 8. Next week, being the first of the month, we'll be having Elder Cecil Gottsmore here with a very, very interesting topic. So please tune in again next Sunday at 6. And Brother Cecil Gottsmore will be presenting the session. He'll be the main presenter on the sessions. So again, until next week, I'd just like to say Asante Sana to everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching us. Thanking you for your support, because the PACM, as an organization that's been around since 1975, can only exist with the support of our people. So we thank you very much for your support, for not just now, but over the years. Over the years since its inception, we have had tremendous support and constant support from the African public. And that is why we are still here, because the encouragement, the positivity we are constantly getting from the African public, showing that there's a need for an organization like this. So in the tradition of the UNIA and the ALC, the Pan-African Congress movement will continue to do what it's doing, because we know what we are doing is something that is good for our people. It is right, it is positive, and we are about positivity. We are about spreading the word of Pan-Africanism. So I would say in the light of Garvey's works, and in honor to Garvey, who was a ceaseless worker for our people throughout his life. As you can see, he never faltered. He never faltered throughout his life. And that's what the PACM aimed to do. So this platform here, yes, we started because of what's happening with coronavirus, but so effective has it been that even when COVID is over, it's a platform that we will continue, for the simple reason it allows us to reach our people wherever in the Pan-African world they are, which is powerful. Because when we see what the UNI was doing in its day, it used the cutting edge technology of its day, which was the printing press. As Brother Mandingo mentioned, the Garvey's literature was published in newspapers in English, French, and Spanish, and was circulated around the Pan-African world. How many organizations today are in a position to publish even one newspaper in 3 languages that can reach our people? Not many. So the UNIA was phenomenal. It was an organization that was well ahead of its time. And in light of the UNIA, like I said, the PACM will continue to do its work to the best of its ability. So until next week, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. So I'd like to end this broadcast by saying Kwaheri.